Hello, thank you for being here. So yeah, Visual Studio updates for .NET developers. I'm Syed Hashimi. We're going to go ahead and get started here. We've only got 25 minutes. So yeah, let's try and get through some of this stuff. On my PowerPoint here, I have a AKA link that goes to a repository that has some resources here. So that link is aka.ms/syedha/netconf2023. I'll leave that on the screen for a minute. This will go to a GitHub repository that has a sample app that I'll be showing later, as well as some links. So let me go and show you the links. Let me show you that repository here. So here's the sample, and it's in the source v1 folder here. And then at the bottom, there's some related links here on some of the things that we'll talk about. And we have an interactive one that's coming up here, so I've got that link here as well. All right, let me go back to PowerPoint just for a brief kind of second here. So what we'll do is we're going to do a demo of dev tunnels here in Visual Studio, and you're going to have a chance to be able to vote as well. So you can grab this AKA link. This is in the GitHub repository as well at that bottom link that I showed you. So keep that handy. The link may not work just yet, but we'll take a look at when that does kind of get going. We'll go back to Visual Studio here. I've got a sample. We'll do a quick kind of fun sample demo that you can interact with, and then we'll go to a bigger, more end-to-end kind of sample there. Let me go ahead and run this. As I'm running this app, we can see that it's hosted on localhost. And the thing is, you know, I'm ready to take this app and then share it with some colleagues or even get some votes here. I want to share it with the community, right? So what I want to do here is convert my local host URL to a URL that can be publicly accessible by all you guys. All right, so I'm going to go back. We're going to use Visual Studio Dev Tunnels for that. So let me minify this one. And here in the dropdown, the debug dropdown, we've got Dev Tunnels. And I've already created a Dev Tunnel here. You can create a new tunnel with Create a Tunnel. But I've already done that. I'll go ahead and pick the Demo 1 tunnel. And this is when we're working with tunnels, there's two different types of tunnels, a temporary tunnel. And a temporary tunnel is a tunnel that will exist while that instance of Visual Studio is open. A persistent tunnel will exist across several sessions of Visual Studio. So a persistent tunnel can stay there for days and weeks and months. As long as it's getting used occasionally, that URL will stay active. But a temporary tunnel, the URL will disappear once you close Visual Studio. So that's the difference between those two tunnel types. I've already set my tunnel to be Demo 1. I'm going to go ahead and I will start without debugging, but you can do debugging as well. Tunnels work for both debugging and not debugging. And now I have a different URL, and that URL is the same that the FW link is pointing to. And I can see I've already got some votes here for ice cream. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and take some time to vote on your favorite ice cream, whether it's vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry. And I don't have this set up to auto refresh, but wow, I can see vanilla is taking a strong lead here, which is pretty surprising. You know, I'm a kind of strawberry fan, but let me go take a look at the code here. I think it's kind of suspicious here because I was working with Mads Christensen, and he loves vanilla flavored ice cream. So I wonder if he's done something here. But before I do that, I notice I've got a misspelling here, strawberry. OK, that's right. So now let me bring this down. And then what I'll do is I'll go back here. Let me zoom in on this part of it. And then let me get Visual Studio set up. What I'm going to do is do a hot reload. And then we'll get that one updated. All right, so right here is the hot reload button. I'm just going to go ahead and click that. Oh, wow. Unexpected. OK. All right, so I got some kind of hot reload error here, but anyways, that's okay. Why don't we'll stop debugging. We'll do it one more time. Let's try it one more time. Let's start without debugging again. And I'm running on like a daily build here, so if I do run into problems, doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to run into these same sort of problems here, because I get this right off the dev machine. Oh, it restarted the count. I apologize about that, everybody. OK, let's take a look at that code here. So now we've got ice cream here. OK. All right, so I think Mads Christensen has done this. So let me go ahead and remove this. Like I said, he loves the vanilla flavored ice cream there. Let me refresh my votes to see what we're at. We're at 252. Let me hot reload this. Hopefully this one works. OK, it doesn't work. All right, anyways, we'll leave it there because I don't want to redo it, but we'll divide vanilla by 2 at the end. Let's see what the votes are at. All right, so we'll let that one kind of keep going in the background while we take a look at some different things here. I wanted to show a bigger kind of end-to-end sample here, but we've only got, we only have 25 minutes. So what I'll do is I'm going to take you through some slides that kind of show the experience, and then we'll get back to Visual Studio after we go through these. So here what I'll do is I'm going to create a new ASP.NET Web API project. So I'm going to go through File, New Project, Create New Project, and I'm going to run through this relatively fast. I'll give my project a name like I always do. I'll pick .NET 8 for this particular project, and here I've unchecked use controllers, but everything that I'm doing here you can either do with minimal endpoints or with controller endpoints. It's all the same. So now I've got my .NET 8 ASP.NET Web API created here. It's called My Restaurant API. The first thing that I want to point out is this new file in this template that's called myrestaurantapi.http. And you will get this file whether you're using Visual Studio or .NET New to create your project. This is a part of the template itself. And this is some new things that we've worked on. So this is what that file looks like. And we'll get back to this file in a little bit. But the idea of this file is you can author HTTP requests in this file, and then you can submit the request and then see the response. So we're going to take a look at that. So in order to get this to actually execute, I have to go ahead and run my project. So I'll do that with start without debugging. And that just does a build, and then we get the Swagger page, and I'll go back to Visual Studio here. And then let me explain what's happening here for a little bit. So we've got a My Restaurant API host address that points to the localhost 5032. That's where my app is running. And then here I have a GET request. And inside this request, I use that variable, and then the first line is what's called the request line. So the format is the HTTP method, the URL, and then the HTTP version. I don't have the HTTP version here. And then after that, you can have headers on the subsequent lines. And then if you had a body, you would leave an empty line, and then the body would go after that. But we'll get to that later as well. Let me go ahead and send this with the send request code lens, and then I'll see the result in the response view. So here we've got 4 tabs. So here you can see the formatted response. So if it's JSON or XML, you'll get the formatted text. On the raw tab, we can see that we get no formatting there. Let me go check out the headers. So these are the headers that come back with the response itself. So we can see those headers that are coming back. And then you can also inspect the request. So here we can see the full URL, and then we can see the headers that went along with the request and a body if there was one. But there was no body here. All right, so that was a basic kind of HTTP file, but there's a lot more functionality in the HTTP file that we'll be getting back to here in a little bit after we create some more endpoints in this project here. All right, so now what I'm going to do is run you through some scaffolding to create some endpoints that we can then exercise with the HTTP file. All right, so this is what that same project that we've been working on. So I've got my restaurant service. I'm going to right-click and say Add New Scaffolded Item. Or sorry, what I'm going to do is add a few classes here. So I've got some class files that I'm going to add in. First, I'll add the contact class, and these are all very kind of basic classes here. Nothing special here. They are set up for Entity Framework with an ID there. Admin contact, menu item category, enum, just more kind of basic things. So I'll just kind of run through these relatively quickly. Here's my menu item ordered. And the app that we're building is an API for a to-go order restaurant so that we can submit your to-go orders there. Order status, payment method, to-go order, various different models here. So now at this time would be a good time to then go ahead and build your solution to make sure that everything is working great. So I'll use the build menu for that. You can also use Control-Shift-B. We can see that the build is now successfully completed here. And now what I'll do is I'll use scaffolding here. So you right-click on the project and say Add New Scaffolded Item. And all of our scaffolders have already been updated for .NET 8, so those should be working great. When I get to this dialog, I'm going to go to the API tab here because I'm dealing with an API. At this point, I can either pick if I want either controllers or the endpoints. So for this demo, we'll go ahead and pick the API with read-write endpoints using Entity Framework. Now at this point, I need to provide some data for what are the endpoints that I want scaffolded here. So the inputs here are the model class, and this is a drop-down. So with the model class, that's the class that you want these the CRUD operations, the create, read, update, delete, and there's also details there too, I believe. So here I'll go ahead and pick the contact model class there, and now we have to say, where do we want the endpoints code to be written to? Do you want it in an existing file? And if you wanted it in an existing file, you use the drop down. Otherwise, you click the plus button here. So I'll click the plus button to create a new class. You can customize the class name, but there is a default here, and I'll go with the default file, which is default name, which is good for me. You also need to specify the DB context. So this is just like the endpoints class. If you had an existing DB context that you wanted to use, you would pick it in the drop-down. Otherwise, you click plus. And then there's also a default name for the context as well. I'm happy with that default name, so I'll go with that. For database provider, we've got these 4 options here. It doesn't matter which option you use here. Entity Framework is compatible with these. For this particular demo, I'll just use SQLite. I think everybody knows that things work great with SQL Server, so demoing with SQLite is great as well. And this is a local database, so I don't need any remotes. I don't need a remote connection to anything here. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and click Add here to go ahead and add this. It's going to go ahead and do some generation here, and I did kind of speed this up. And at the end, we do get the contact endpoint class to be created here. There's a few things here. There's some get methods, as well as put and post, as well as delete. So those are the kind of CRUD operations there. All right, so now what I'll do is we need to do the same thing for those 4 other classes here for the admin contact, and I'm just going to run through these because we don't have that much time. So we've got the admin contact, and then we also want to do menu item. We want people to be able to view the menu items. And then we also have menu item order. So this is a part of the to-go order. So users need to be able to order menu items here. And then the same with to-go order. So here's we're generating our to-go order, and there's our to-go order endpoints. Okay. All right, so now everything has been updated, and whenever you're done scaffolding, that's always a good opportunity to then go ahead and try and build your project, make sure everything's working, and then also probably do a commit. I would normally probably do a commit here just to kind of save my work and to track my progress, but don't need to do that for this particular demo here. All right, if I go and look at the, when scaffolding, so let's talk about the scaffolding, right? So when we scaffolded the contact endpoint, a lot of stuff actually happened on that initial scaffolding. So the sorry, let's back up. So the contact endpoint class was added, the database context class was created, and then program.cs was updated to register the contact endpoints as well as the DB context. And then in app settings.json, there's a connection string for SQLite. So those are some of the things that have been modified in the project, and I'll go through, we'll show these real quick. So in program.cs at the very top, lines 6 through 8, we've got the database context that's getting initialized and registered. And then we have the endpoints that were registered as well. And now that I'm looking at this code, I realize that we still have the weather forecast stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And this is what the code looks like after it's been cleaned up. All right, so that's what we got. So now what we've done is we've created a web API project. We've added some model classes. We've scaffolded out some web API endpoints. But this still doesn't actually work yet because we haven't connected it to the database, right? Like, we created our data model. we said we wanted a SQLite database, but we haven't applied the data schema to the database. So that's what we need to do now. And then we're going to use Entity Framework migrations for this. And if you've done this in the past, you might have gone through these similar steps. And then at this point, you normally would probably drop into the command line or the terminal in Visual Studio and execute .NET EF commands. But we've got some of those commands integrated into Visual Studio as well. So you can right-click on your project in the Connected Services node. Right-click on your project, and then double-click on Connected Services to get to this view. And then here we can see I've got an entry for my SQLite. So what I'll do is I'll tap the 3 buttons to see what are the actions that I have available for this SQLite database here. The actions that we're the most interested in here are add migration. So this is the equivalent of this is equivalent to running .NET EF command on the command line. The next one that's interesting that we'll talk about in a little bit is update database. So when you're working with Entity Framework, you create your model, and then you hook it up to a database context, and then you generate Entity Framework migrations. So migrations are code that goes into your project that represents the data schema for the database. So the first step is to add 1 or more migrations. And then the next step is to do update database. So we're going to do an add migration here, and that will cover all those items that we scaffolded, all those 5 classes, right? All right, so it's going to spin for maybe about a minute to try to discover your database context. And if you have more than 1 database context, you can use the drop-down to select which particular DB context that you want to work with here. So I'll pick that one that I have, the My Restaurant API context that we just created. Go ahead and click Finish here. And I did also speed this one up a little bit too. So this does take a minute. So it's going to add the migration. And then that's it. So at this point, if I go back and look at my Solution Explorer, there's now a migrations folder here. And then 2 files will appear in this folder the first time you do a migration. One is for the snapshot, and then the other is the migration itself. And to be quite frank, I personally don't care what's in these files. I don't need to do anything with this for this particular project, so I'm not even going to look at it. The next thing that we need to do, so we've created our API endpoints, we've initialized our database. But there's no data that's actually in this database, right? Like there's no menu items. Users can't see and order the menu items. So how do we do that? So here, to do that, we're going to modify the DB context. So I'm going to go to the data folder, and then we look at My Restaurant API context. And now what we need to do is override a method that's called onCreatingModel. But I'm going to add a couple of supporting methods here to get some sample data and JSON. And this is really for just seed data, right? This method is not for like if you have thousands of rows that you want to add. This is for constant values that are in your database, like your menu. Those things are not changing all the time. So that's why we use seed data for that. So here I create a method, get seed data menu items. So this is the seed data for the menu items. I'm just creating 6 menu items. We're starting pretty small here. And then only for this demo, I also added some sample customers here because I didn't want to have to go through the registration process. For a real app, I wouldn't add this as seed data, but for this demo. So I create this method called getSeedDataContacts. All right, we got to try to hurry a little bit. OK, so now we added that stuff. So now that's where my slides end. So let's go back to Visual Studio here. So one thing that I have done, let me close everything. One thing that I have done that I didn't kind of capture in the slides was the update database. So I did go through, and then I did run through update database here. And let me show you that. We don't need to go through this whole process because I've already done that. But what this will do is it's just like the apply migrations one, right? It'll spin It's looking through the code to discover the DB context, and once it finds that, the next and finish button will light up. You can click finish to then go ahead and take those migrations and then use dotnet ef update database command, I believe, to then go through and do that. But yeah, like I said, I've already done that step, so we'll go ahead and just kind of run this app here. And then we'll take a look at the HTTP file and a few other things along the way as well. All right, we got about 4 minutes left here. So let me go ahead and let this get started up. And then we're going to start exploring and interacting with this API here. All right, so I've got my API is running. Let's take a look at our ice cream poll real quick. Let me unzoom that real quick just to see how we are. We'll check back on this at the end of the oh, wow. OK, rate limit exceeded. Wow. OK, so this is all right, how can I get back to it then? Let me go back to the localhost one. All right, anyways, wow, strawberry. OK, so strawberry is my favorite. That one was not rigged. Mads Christensen definitely tried to set up vanilla, but we got strawberry and the huge win here. Lots of votes. Wow, I really appreciate all the votes, everybody. Thank you very much for doing those votes. And I apologize for the rate limit exceeded. I should have created like a special kind of dev tunnel for this one. But this never happened to me before in a demo, but we got some really excited people here. All right, let's go back to our kind of restaurant API. We'll take a look at the ice cream here in a little bit. So what I want to do now is we've created several API endpoints here. So what I want to do is I want to explore these endpoints, right? So what I'll do is I'm going to go to the View menu and then Other Windows. And this is a new kind of experience that is relatively new in the past few months here. So it's called Endpoint Explorer. So let me go and open that up. Now we can see here I've got my restaurant API. So this will show you any web API endpoints that are discovered in your solution. So if you had several web projects, you would see those. Let me go ahead and expand this. So here we can see the different endpoints that I have. So these are the endpoints that we created. We've got the admin contact, and those are the CRUD operations for that, the contact, the menu items, menu item ordered, and then to-go order. So let's go ahead and start exploring this. So what can we do with the Endpoints Explorer? All right, so what I can do is I can right-click, and there's kind of two things. I can either go to where that endpoint is declared in the code with open in the editor, or I can do a generate request. So let's take a look at generate request. And let me close that one. We do have a bug where it kind of generates the request all the way at the very bottom here. So here's that request, and then instead of admin contact, I'll do contact because I don't have any admin contacts added. I'll go ahead and send that request, and then here's our kind of response: the formatted, the raw, the headers, the request. We saw some of these before, and now I want to talk a little bit more about other kind of features that we have here with the HTTP file in the 2 minutes that we have left. So we've got variables here that we talked about before, but also we have secret support. We only have like a minute and a half. But what I've done is I've used ASP.NET user secrets. So let me get this manage user secrets here. I've created a secret here, templates API key dev, and this should be some kind of restaurant thing here, but that's what I called it. And then I've also created a file here that's called http-client.env.json. So these could be, this is actually for your environment. So we have two different environments here. I have a dev and a staging environment here. And then I have different values for these variables. One of them comes from ASP.NET user secrets. This is a secret that's encrypted with Windows DP API. And then I also have Azure Key Vault. So let's take a look at that. All right, so here I'm using the message one. The message one is defined over here as message hello from dev. And then templates API key, that comes from user secrets. And then the secret from encrypted. So let me go ahead and send that off, and then we'll take a look at those values. We have 45 seconds. All right, so the encrypted one was not a secret. Oh, that's actually different. Hold on. So one thing that I forgot to mention is we have a... Okay, hold on. We have an environment selector here that I forgot to select. Hold on. OK, environment selector for dev. So now let me save that. We got 21 seconds. Let me go back to secrets here. Let me send that request one more time. Okay, so there's the value from encrypted with DP API. It's hard to read on this kind of small screen here. Value from user secrets is hello from user secrets. That's what I have over here, hello from user secrets. I'll change it to 222. Actually, I won't do that, but and then I have the message. We also have Kiva. So lots more. Take a look at that AKA link that's got those resources with lots more information of everything that we talked about here before today. Let me go ahead and do the host. Thank you very much. We got Q&A.